¿Estamos todos, Gemma? ¿Estamos todos? Me espero cuando tú me digas.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank all the very warm welcomes and to thank everyone present here, to welcome the online audience, of course, and a very special thanks to Las Naves for hosting us as part of the FogGuru projects and for organizing the events today. So what I wanted to do today was to tell you a little bit about what is fog computing and how we have applied this technology for improving water management. I'm going to speak mostly about the fog computing, and the students will go into a little bit more details about the work they have done. So I'm not sure if yes. So fog computing comes from this understanding that the nature of data that people process and that enterprises process is changing. So this is a quote from Gartner, the American consulting company, which a couple of years ago realized that about 10% of the data managed by enterprises was being produced not in the big data centers, but elsewhere. And their prediction, and this prediction is becoming true nowadays, is that by 2025, 75% of the data will have been produced out of the data centers. So if data is not produced in the data centers, where is it produced? It is produced, well, mostly by the Internet of Things. So nowadays, we all have our smartphones, we have a lot of devices, the cities install a lot of sensors to measure lots of different elements of data. And this together is an enormous amount of data, and this amount of data is growing extremely quickly. So if we think about this from the point of view of the technology, we have on the left side the device, which produces data somehow based on something it has sensed. And we traditionally use the clouds to process the data, to analyze, to extract useful information out of the data that we have produced. Now, carrying the data from the device to the clouds can be a long journey. And in fact, in between those two things, we have the network. And the network may be a very, very long journey for data going from one place to the other. So if we think about this, and we think that a huge amount of data is being produced on the left side, then it becomes either not desirable or even not possible to carry all the data to the clouds to be processed and then trashed, because usually we don't keep the data, or we keep only a part of the data. So the idea of fog computing is that we're going to take additional computing resources and bring them very close from the sources of data. So this is a view of what a fog computing platform may look like. On the bottom, we have the devices, those things that produce data. Oops. And those things usually communicate their data using relatively short-ranged wireless networks like 5G, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and we're going to see today about the LoRa protocol. Inside the system, we have other types of networks to carry the data between the machines of the fog and towards the cloud, and those are fiber, DSL, Ethernet, 5G. On top, we have the cloud servers. They are very powerful. They can do a lot of things, but we can see they are pretty far from the devices. So the idea is to add those nodes in the middle that we see here, which are going to receive at least part of the data, process them, analyze them, and then either they may be able to react to something immediately by themselves and then autonomously react to certain events, or to transmit their data to the cloud, but this will be in much smaller volume. So what we're looking at in FogGuru is that middle part, the part that actually pre-processes the data before it reaches the cloud. So the cloud and the fog are very similar. They are not totally the same. In a cloud, so here on the left we have a picture from a cloud data center. I think this one belongs to Google. Even the biggest clouds have not many of those data centers. I think Google has something like 20 distributed across the world. And each data center we see is a huge site with a lot of computing resources. So all those things in the middle are computer servers stacked with each other, and you have an enormous number of them over there. They are connected to each other and to the rest of the system, to the rest of the internet, using very high performance networks. And in cloud computing, it does not really matter where your applications are running. If your application is running on a machine on the left or the right or the front or the bottom of this data center, does not really matter. In a fog platform, what we're going to do is to distribute additional resources, so where the cloud will remain there, the cloud will not go away, and we're going to place additional resources close to the sources of data, close to the users, close to the devices, and that means everywhere. So they will be distributed in many different locations, and in each one of those locations, we will have just a small number of resources. So it could be this Raspberry Pi that we see on screen. The different points of presence will be connected with not the super high performance networks, first because it is very hard to bring those networks everywhere, and second because it is not necessary. What we will use is community networks, which means whatever you can find locally. If you have fiber connections, you use fiber. If you have DSL, you use DSL. Otherwise, you can use 5G and so on. And here, the difference with the cloud is the location of the resources becomes very important. It becomes very important because this was the reason why we deployed the fog in the first place. So the FogGuru project is funded by the European Commission, and it brings two universities, the University of Rennes 1, which is my university, and the University of TU Berlin in Germany. Two very deep tech companies. There is Elastisys here in Sweden and UHopper in Italy. EIT Digital is bringing training for the PhD students about innovation and entrepreneurship. And of course, last but not least, Las Naves, which is hosting us here today and which allows us to deploy the technologies and to test them in real settings. And this is a very important part of the project. So what does FogGuru do? Well, the goal of FogGuru is first to design and to invent new technologies for fog computing. It's a very young technology, not mature yet, and there remains a lot of research challenges that need to be tackled in order to build complete fog computing platforms. So the first goal will be to think and to design a general purpose fog computing platform. And the students will tell you a little bit more about it in a few minutes. And to design this, each one of them is researching a specific aspect of the design of those platforms. So I will not enter into the very technical details. The second thing is that having a platform is great, but we need to be able to deploy applications there. We want to deploy new innovative applications. So part of the research is also on designing the development environments, the environments where we're going to run those applications. And we have focused on one specific type of development environments called data stream processing middlewares. We're trying to build advice for new developers on how to design a fog computing application. It looks a little bit like a cloud application, but it also has specificities. So we are trying to develop guidelines on how should you develop a good fog computing application. And last but not least, we see these projects as a way to train those 8 young, talented researchers and to give them the best opportunities for their future careers in developing and in promoting the fog computing technologies. So in Valencia, we have started what we call the Living Lab, and the goal of the Living Lab was to take those technologies out of the lab, out of the universities, and to bring them in their city, to deploy them in real settings. The goal is first for us to validate the research by the students. We all know that you can do some very good research, have very good results in your nice little controlled environment, and this may or may not work when you face a real setting, a real deployed system. So we wanted to experiment in a large scale. We wanted to also use this opportunity to develop fog applications and to learn how those applications should be designed, so to develop those guidelines. The students, of course, they are very strong technical researchers, but the goal here is also to increase their focus and to make them think also about the way their technologies are going to be used, the way enterprises may make use of those technologies. So this is an important aspect which is not purely scientific, but also increases the value and the impact of the work we're doing. We wanted to meet real customers and citizens because we know that those technologies disrupt a little bit the way the companies are operating. We know that the citizens need to be involved in the design of those systems. So this is really part of the value of what we find here. We wanted to benefit the city of Valencia. Of course, we are going to deploy our systems, and those systems, we hope, are going to be useful for the city and for the citizens. And last but not least, of course, this is a great opportunity for us to disseminate and to show the results of the project here in Valencia and today online worldwide, so to say. So we have worked during the first part of the Living Lab with this company called Emivasa, which is the public-private company in Valencia in charge of distributing drinking water to people's homes. So we see a picture representing, well, we see something where water is being produced and cleaned and then distributed in everybody's homes. And what is interesting is that for now a very long time, I think it has been done over the last 15 years. This company and the city of Valencia have deployed smart water meters, which of course measure how much water everyone has consumed. But very interestingly, they report those data through wireless technologies. So those data are available very quickly and can be analyzed, of course, to determine how much every customer should pay at the end of the month, but also as a tool for management of the whole water system. Like we can, for example, detect if there has been a leak of the water because suddenly the consumption of the water has an unusual trend. So what we have worked on is to increase this system and to think about the next generation of this system with more modern technologies and using fog computing technologies to process the data coming from the smart water meters. So the students are going to tell more details about this in a few minutes, so I am not going to enter too much right now. I just wanted to thank you, everyone, and on behalf of the FogGuru projects, to welcome everyone, and I hope this meeting is interesting for everyone.